She thought it would be just another hearing, but one folder of evidence turned the room upside down. In minutes, her confidence collapsed, and Tulsi Gabbard's words left Washington stunned. Stay tuned, because what happened next changed everything. Nobody in Washington expected fireworks that morning. The House Oversight Committee had scheduled another long, technical hearing on intelligence operations, one of those sessions where most viewers tune out after a few minutes. But what unfolded was anything but ordinary. From the moment Tulsi Gabbard, now serving as Director of National Intelligence, adjusted her microphone and set a thick folder of documents on the table, the atmosphere shifted. The cameras zoomed in, the room fell silent, and even members of Congress who usually scrolled their phones during testimony leaned forward. Something was about to happen. Gabbard wasted no time. Her voice was steady, her words deliberate. She began by stating that integrity in public office was not negotiable, no matter what side of the political spectrum a leader claimed to represent. Then she paused, looked directly at Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and slid the first set of papers across the table. "These," Gabbard said, "are receipts of luxury accommodations and gifts accepted while publicly championing economic justice." The room stirred. AOC shifted in her seat, clearly caught off guard. She had come prepared to spar over foreign intelligence reports, not her own finances. The documents told a different story. Lavish vacations, private flights, and high-end accessories, all linked to donors and lobbyists. AOC leaned toward her microphone. "Director Gabbard, this is irrelevant. This hearing is about intelligence operations, not personal smear campaigns." But Tulsi didn't flinch. "Congresswoman, accountability is never irrelevant. The American people deserve to know if their representatives are living by the same standards they demand of others." At that, murmurs swept through the chamber. Journalists scribbled frantically in their notebooks. Viewers at home were glued to their screens, sensing that this was not the ordinary back and forth they were used to. For years, AOC had built her image as a fearless fighter for transparency, someone who stood up to corporate influence and government waste. But now, in real time, that image was being challenged with cold, hard evidence. Tulsi lifted another folder. "These records show taxpayer-funded travel expenses, thousands of dollars that do not align with congressional guidelines. Can you explain why?" AOC opened her mouth but hesitated. The pause was all it took. That silence echoed louder than any denial she could muster. The hearing was no longer about intelligence operations. It had transformed into a confrontation about ethics, money, and trust. And by the time the committee adjourned that day, it was clear something had cracked wide open. As the committee settled back into their seats, the tension between Tulsi Gabbard and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez only grew sharper. Reporters' cameras clicked nonstop, capturing every glance, every gesture, every flicker of discomfort. Tulsi leaned forward. "Congresswoman, you have built your career speaking about fairness and equality. Yet, the evidence in front of this committee suggests you have personally benefited in ways that contradict your public statements. How do you reconcile this?" AOC straightened her shoulders and spoke quickly, her tone firm. "Director Gabbard, I have dedicated my career to serving working families. Any suggestion otherwise is a distortion pushed by those who want to silence progressive voices." Tulsi didn't raise her voice, but the precision in her words cut sharply. "So, these receipts are distortions? The invoices for a luxury hotel suite in Miami, billed during a so-called grassroots economic justice rally, are those distortions?" Gasps rippled through the audience. Even some committee members shifted uncomfortably. AOC fired back. "Those expenses were not personal. They were tied to official events. I followed the rules." Tulsi slid another document across the table. "Then explain this chartered flight invoice paid through taxpayer funds, routed through your office. The itinerary shows no official event, just a 3-day weekend." The pause was longer this time. AOC inhaled, adjusted her papers, and avoided eye contact. One congressman leaned into his microphone. "Miss Gabbard, are you saying taxpayer money was used for personal travel?" Tulsi's answer was calm. "The documents speak for themselves. The public deserves to hear the truth directly from Representative Ocasio-Cortez." The room buzzed. Every eye was on AOC. She tapped her microphone, her tone sharper now. "This is political theater. Instead of focusing on national security, we are chasing headlines. Director Gabbard clearly has a political agenda." Tulsi didn't blink. "My agenda is accountability. The American people trusted you when you said you would fight for them. What they see here today is not a fight for them. It's a fight to protect yourself." The exchange grew hotter. AOC leaned forward. "And what about your own record, Director Gabbard? You've switched political parties more times than most Americans switch phone plans. Who are you to lecture me about consistency?" The jab landed, and the audience reacted with a mix of gasps and murmurs. But Tulsi didn't retreat. "Consistency matters, yes," Tulsi replied. "But hypocrisy is worse. You promised transparency, and these records show anything but." The chairman banged his gavel, trying to restore order, but the spectacle was unstoppable. Millions of viewers were already clipping the moment, sharing it across social media. The clash wasn't just in the committee room, it was spreading everywhere, and both women knew it was only the beginning. The gavel struck again, but order was only partly restored. The committee chamber had transformed into a stage, and every word between Tulsi Gabbard and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was amplified far beyond Capitol Hill. A Republican member leaned forward. "Representative Ocasio-Cortez, the documents entered into the record show irregularities in both gift reporting and travel reimbursements. Do you deny these entries?" AOC took a deep breath. "I deny any wrongdoing. I have complied with House ethics rules at every step. What's happening here is a coordinated attempt to discredit me." Tulsi's eyes stayed locked on her. "Then why, Congresswoman, do the disclosures not match? This record shows luxury jewelry, valued at thousands of dollars, never reported on your filings. Who paid for it?" AOC's tone sharpened. "This is beneath the dignity of this committee. If you want to weaponize half-truths, that's on you. I'm here to talk about national security, not personal attacks." Another member, this time a Democrat, cleared his throat. "Director Gabbard, with respect, is it your position that this evidence ties directly to breaches of ethics, or are these simply irregularities?" Tulsi didn't hesitate. "Irregularities become breaches when they form a pattern, and the pattern here is undeniable." She held up a binder thick with receipts. "This is not one oversight. This is a repeated failure to disclose." The cameras zoomed in. AOC clenched her jaw, flipping through her notes. She struck back. "If the American people are watching, let me be clear. This is a distraction. Working families are struggling, climate change is worsening, and instead of addressing those crises, this committee is playing politics with receipts." Tulsi leaned closer to her microphone. "Working families are struggling precisely because too many leaders say one thing and do another. If you accept luxury perks while speaking against them, you weaken the very cause you claim to defend." The chamber erupted with chatter. Reporters were already firing out tweets. Gabbard confronts AOC with unreported gifts. Sparks fly at oversight hearing. The chairman tried again to quiet the room. "We will have order. Both parties will have their chance to question." But Tulsi's challenge lingered in the air. The public could feel it. The narrative of a fearless progressive warrior was beginning to wobble. AOC's supporters online rushed to defend her, but the visuals, the folders, the receipts, the hesitation, were powerful. One moment stood out above all, Tulsi sliding a photo into the record, a picture of AOC at a luxury resort, smiling in designer sunglasses. "Was this trip grassroots activism?" Tulsi asked. The silence that followed was louder than any answer. The battle lines were drawn, and the questions were only going to get tougher. The chairman gestured to the next speaker. A senior Republican member adjusted his glasses and leaned toward the microphone. "Representative Ocasio-Cortez, let's move past generalities. I want direct answers. Did you accept luxury accommodations at no personal expense while on official duty?" AOC's voice carried a hint of frustration. "Members of Congress are often invited to events, and arrangements are sometimes provided. That does not mean I acted improperly. Everything was cleared by staff." The congressman pressed. "So, you're saying your staff approved trips that now appear as undisclosed gifts? That is your explanation?" AOC straightened. "I'm saying this is a selective reading of records. My office followed protocol." Tulsi leaned in, her tone precise. "Congresswoman, protocol is not a shield against accountability. You pledged to be different, to rise above politics as usual, yet these records show the same old behavior: perks, privileges, and silence when caught." The Democrat from earlier interjected, trying to ease the tension. "Director Gabbard, while ethics are important, should we not focus on the broader issue of intelligence oversight? The American people need assurance of their security." But Tulsi shook her head. "The American people also need assurance that those who speak of justice live by it. Security begins with trust." The room buzzed with whispers. Cameras zoomed on AOC's expression, composed but increasingly strained. Another Republican member jumped in. "Representative, explain this. A chartered flight billed at over $30,000. Records show no hearings, no constituent events, no legislative meetings. Where did you go?" AOC hesitated. "Personal matters sometimes overlap with official schedules. It's not unusual." The congressman's tone hardened. "It's unusual when taxpayers foot the bill." The words landed heavily. Viewers watching from home saw not just a political clash, but a moral one. Tulsi's voice cut through the noise again. "You speak about lifting up families who can't afford rent, yet here is evidence of weekends spent in five-star resorts. How do you explain that to the mother working 2 jobs just to pay for groceries?" AOC's answer was measured but firm. "I explain it by reminding her that I fight every day for policies that give her a living wage and affordable health care. That's what matters, not fabricated distractions meant to silence me." But the momentum was against her. The documents, the images, the relentless questioning, it all chipped away at her defense. The chairman finally struck the gavel. "We will pause here for a short recess." As members shuffled out, the cameras stayed fixed. Tulsi gathered her papers calmly, while AOC quickly whispered with aides, her expression tight. For the audience, one thing was clear. The storm had only begun, and the toughest questions were still waiting. When the committee reconvened, the tension was thicker than before. The audience had barely settled when Tulsi Gabbard placed another binder on the table, thicker than the first. Cameras zoomed in as she flipped it open with deliberate precision. She began quietly. "During recess, my office authorized the release of additional documentation. These are not summaries or second-hand reports. These are verified financial statements tied directly to Representative Ocasio-Cortez's accounts." A wave of murmurs filled the chamber. AOC shifted in her chair, her aides passing notes quickly. Tulsi continued. "The records show a series of transfers, routed through a nonprofit linked to your campaign, paying for private expenses, designer clothing, spa treatments, even international travel that was never disclosed." AOC pressed her microphone. "That is misleading. Nonprofits often handle logistics for public figures. None of this indicates personal gain." Tulsi's reply was steady. "Then why do the invoices list your name directly, with no mention of staff or official business? Here," she held up a page for the cameras, "a first-class ticket to Paris, billed as constituent outreach. Do you deny this?" The silence was heavy. AOC glanced down at her notes, then back up. "That trip involved international discussions on climate policy. It was legitimate work." A Republican member interjected. "Then where are the transcripts of those meetings? Because the itinerary shows shopping districts and private dinners, not conferences." The crowd buzzed again. AOC's tone sharpened. "This is cherry-picking. Every member of Congress knows travel involves multiple engagements. To paint it as indulgence is dishonest." Tulsi leaned closer. "Dishonest is campaigning against corporate greed while accepting gifts from those same corporations. Dishonest is promising transparency while concealing financial perks. That is what the public sees today." Another Democrat tried to deflect. "Director Gabbard, your focus here seems less about intelligence oversight and more about attacking a colleague. Is this your personal vendetta?" Tulsi didn't blink. "This is about integrity. If Americans cannot trust their representatives to be honest about something as basic as travel expenses, how can they trust them with matters of national security?" The weight of her words lingered. The chairman tapped his gavel lightly, signaling for order, but the damage was already visible. AOC responded, her voice rising slightly. "I was elected to fight for working families, and that's exactly what I'll continue to do. These attacks are meant to derail that mission, but they will not succeed." Tulsi replied softly, almost cutting through the noise. "Fighting for them means living like them, not living above them." That line stuck. It was replayed instantly on social media, spreading like wildfire. Clips captioned, "Tulsi versus AOC, Hypocrisy Exposed," began trending before the hearing even adjourned. And everyone in the room knew the next round of questioning would only push AOC deeper into the spotlight she could no longer control. The chairman rapped the gavel again, signaling the next round. This time, the tone of the hearing had shifted. What started as tense questioning was now circling around a single theme: accountability. A senior Republican member leaned in. "Mr. Chairman, I think it's time we stop circling the issue. These documents show a pattern that cannot be ignored. We need to consider whether this committee should recommend a formal ethics investigation." The room filled with murmurs. Journalists typed frantically. The cameras caught every flicker of expression across AOC's face, composure on the outside, but tension in her eyes. A Democrat jumped in quickly. "This is premature. Nothing presented here today has been independently verified by House Ethics. To move toward an investigation based on selective documents would set a dangerous precedent." Tulsi spoke again, measured and direct. "The documents have been verified. Every receipt has been cross-referenced. Every invoice has a source trail. This is not rumor, it's evidence." The Republican member nodded. "Then I formally raise the question. Should this committee refer Representative Ocasio-Cortez to the House Ethics Office?" The chairman hesitated, tapping his pen on the desk. The room was buzzing with anticipation. AOC finally leaned forward, her voice firm. "This is outrageous. To suggest that my work, my advocacy, and my dedication to the people can be overshadowed by misleading claims is nothing short of political harassment." Tulsi turned toward her. "Then answer this clearly. Did you or did you not accept gifts without disclosure?" AOC's pause was brief, but it was enough. "I have never intentionally violated ethics rules." Tulsi seized the moment. "Intentionally or not, the record shows violations. The American people expect more than technical excuses. They expect honesty." The Democrat countered again. "Director Gabbard, this is grandstanding. You've turned an oversight hearing into a spectacle." But the Republican shot back. "A spectacle caused by the evidence, not by the messenger. The people deserve transparency." The clash between members themselves now became part of the drama. The hearing was no longer just Tulsi versus AOC, it was the entire committee weighing what to do next. One independent member spoke up, his tone cautious. "If even half of what's been presented today holds up under scrutiny, we have no choice but to investigate. This is about trust in government." The chairman raised his hand. "We will not decide today, but let it be clear, the matter of referral is now formally on the table." Gasps rippled through the room. AOC sat back, her jaw set tight. Tulsi quietly stacked her papers, saying nothing further. She didn't need to. The narrative had already shifted. What began as questioning had escalated into the possibility of a formal investigation, and that single word, investigation, was about to dominate every headline in the country. By the time the committee adjourned for the evening, the story had already left the building. Outside the Capitol, a swarm of reporters pressed against barricades, microphones raised, cameras flashing. The echo of Tulsi Gabbard's final words, "The matter of referral is now formally on the table," was already reverberating across the nation. News networks cut into regular programming. Headlines scrolled in bold letters. "Ethics questions surround AOC after explosive hearing," and "Gabbard versus Ocasio-Cortez, bombshell documents revealed." Clips of the confrontation dominated television. Tulsi calmly sliding folders across the desk. AOC pausing before answering. The phrase, "living above them," was replayed endlessly, quoted on social media, and turned into memes overnight. On the steps outside, Tulsi addressed a small cluster of reporters. Her voice was measured, her demeanor controlled. "This is not about politics. This is about trust. Every American, regardless of party, deserves leaders who live by the values they preach." Inside, AOC's team was scrambling. Surrounded by aides, she refused to stop for cameras, brushing past with a brief statement. "This was a smear campaign designed to distract from the real work that needs to be done. I will not be intimidated." But the optics told another story. Tulsi appeared calm, steady, and prepared. AOC appeared defensive, rushed, and cornered. Commentators on evening broadcasts pounced on the contrast. One analyst said, "This was devastating for AOC. Even if she weathers the investigation, her brand as a fighter for transparency has been deeply damaged." Another countered, "This isn't over. AOC has survived political storms before, and her base may rally around her, painting Tulsi as a traitor to progressives." Online, the divide was clear. Supporters of Tulsi praised her courage, tweeting phrases like, "Finally someone standing up for accountability." AOC's defenders blasted the hearing as a witch hunt, using hashtags like #StandWithAOC. Meanwhile, late-night talk shows replayed the sharpest exchanges. The footage of AOC trying to explain the Paris trip drew laughter from some audiences, while others shook their heads at the spectacle of Congress turning into reality TV. For millions watching, it didn't matter who was technically right or wrong. What mattered was the impression. And the impression left behind was simple: Tulsi Gabbard had landed a blow that could not easily be dismissed. Inside her office that night, AOC sat with her advisors. The chatter outside grew louder, the headlines harsher. Her team insisted she fight back aggressively, but she knew something had shifted. The hearing wasn't just another clash, it was a turning point. And by morning, the question wouldn't be what had happened in that room. It would be, can AOC survive what comes next? The next morning, the press gathered in a packed room at the Capitol. Dozens of cameras pointed toward the podium where Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was set to speak. Her team had billed it as a clarification and response, but everyone knew it was her chance to reclaim control of the story. AOC stepped up, flanked by staffers, her expression firm. She adjusted the microphone and began without hesitation. What we witnessed yesterday was not an oversight hearing. It was a carefully staged attack designed to smear my reputation and silence the movement I represent. The room buzzed with flashes and typing. She continued, her voice rising. Director Gabbard's so-called evidence is nothing more than a patchwork of half-truths presented to make headlines. The reality is this. I have always followed House rules. I have always disclosed my finances. And I will not be bullied into submission because powerful interests fear the policies I fight for. A reporter raised a hand. Congresswoman, do you deny that luxury trips and gifts were accepted without disclosure? AOC's eyes narrowed slightly. I deny any wrongdoing. Every trip I've taken had a purpose. Every expense was vetted. To suggest otherwise is dishonest. This is not about receipts. It's about silencing voices that challenge the status quo. Another reporter pressed. Then, how do you explain the Paris trip specifically mentioned by Director Gabbard? Her reply was sharp. That trip included meetings on international climate policy. Did I also have dinner while I was there? Of course. Are we really suggesting members of Congress can't eat meals while working abroad? Some laughter broke out among her supporters in the room, but others remained skeptical. AOC leaned in, her tone almost defiant. Let's be honest. This committee wasn't interested in oversight. They were interested in spectacle. They wanted sound bites, they wanted viral moments, and they got them. But the truth is, the people I represent know my record, and they know my heart. I will not back down. The statement was fiery, but questions lingered. The optics of Tulsi's calm presentation versus AOC's defensive tone were already being dissected by analysts. Outside the press room, Tulsi's team released a short written statement of their own. Yesterday's testimony was based on verified records. No amount of political theater changes the facts. Accountability is not optional. The media ate it up. Clips of AOC's press conference ran alongside Tulsi's quiet rebuttal. Commentators debated. Was AOC's passion strength or desperation? Online, the battle intensified. Hashtags trended on both sides. #TulsiExposes AOC and #HandsOffAOC. Memes circulated. Clips of AOC's fiery tone were shared by supporters, while detractors replayed her pauses and evasions. For AOC, the press conference was a gamble. She had shown her supporters she was willing to fight back. But for undecided viewers, the contrast was stark. Tulsi calm and steady, AOC fiery and defensive. By nightfall, one question dominated cable news panels. Did AOC just steady the ship, or did she make the storm worse? While the cameras focused on AOC's press conference, another battle was unfolding quietly in the corridors of the Capitol. In a side room just off the Oversight Committee chamber, a handful of lawmakers gathered behind closed doors. No reporters, no cameras, just papers spread across a long wooden table. A senior Republican spoke first. We can't ignore this. The documents Gabbard presented are too detailed, too thorough. If we don't act, we'll look like we're protecting her. Another member nodded. The public saw hesitation. They saw inconsistencies. Whether she meant to or not, AOC gave the impression she wasn't being fully honest. A Democrat at the table pushed back. This is premature. Director Gabbard ambushed her with documents. That doesn't equal proof of misconduct. If we jump to referral, we'll set a precedent that anyone can be railroaded with a binder of receipts. The independent member, quiet until now, spoke evenly. This isn't just about partisanship. The hearing went viral. People across the country are talking about it. If the committee does nothing, we risk losing credibility. The room fell silent. One Republican leaned in. Then let's draft the framework. We don't vote yet. We just prepare. If the heat keeps building, we'll be ready. Not far away, AOC huddled with her closest allies. Her aides crowded the room, laptops open, phones buzzing. The air was tense. One advisor spoke urgently. "We need to rally progressives fast. Get statements from allies, line up op-eds, flood social media. If this becomes an official investigation, perception alone could do irreversible damage." AOC leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "I can't show weakness. If I start apologizing, they'll smell blood. I need to double down." Another aide shook his head. "But the optics." Tulsi looked calm. "You looked defensive. We need to shift the narrative to her motives. Make this about her ambition, not your receipts." AOC's eyes hardened. "Then that's what we'll do. This is about Tulsi trying to score points, not about my record. If they want to fight, I'll give them one." Meanwhile, Tulsi sat quietly in her office with just 2 staffers. The atmosphere was calm, almost serene. She flipped through a stack of notes, then set them down. "This was never about theater," she said softly. "It's about trust. And if they choose to move forward, the facts will speak louder than anything else." Her staffer asked, "Do you think they'll recommend an investigation?" Tulsi closed the binder. "They don't have a choice. The public won't let them look the other way." As the night deepened, both camps braced for the next step. One side plotting defense, the other quietly preparing offense. And in the middle sat the committee, torn between politics and principle, knowing that whichever way they turned, the storm would only grow stronger. The Oversight Committee reconvened 3 days later. The chamber was packed. Reporters shoulder to shoulder, cameras jammed into every angle, and a restless audience waiting for history to unfold. The chairman struck the gavel. "This session will come to order. Today, we will determine whether to refer Representative Ocasio-Cortez to the House Ethics Office for formal investigation." The air was electric. A Republican member spoke first. "The evidence provided by Director Gabbard reveals a troubling pattern. It is not one receipt, not one oversight. It is repeated and deliberate. For the sake of public trust, I support referral." A Democrat quickly countered. "This committee cannot allow itself to become a stage for political takedowns. We should not punish a colleague for unverified claims paraded before television cameras." Tulsi remained silent, watching the exchanges carefully. She had already spoken enough. Now the committee would decide. AOC finally leaned toward her microphone. Her voice was steady, but every eye could see the strain behind it. "Let me be clear. I have never betrayed the people who elected me. I may be outspoken, I may be controversial, but I have never abandoned the values I promised to fight for. This is not about receipts. It's about silencing progressives who refuse to bow down." For a moment, the chamber was quiet. Then Tulsi spoke, not loud, not dramatic, just clear. "This isn't about silencing voices. It's about whether we can believe the ones who speak." The words landed heavy. The chairman raised his hand. "The motion has been placed on the table. All those in favor of referral signify by raising your hand." Hands rose slowly, deliberately. One by one, the tally grew. Republicans, one independent, and, after a long pause, even a Democrat lifted his hand. Gasps filled the room. The chairman nodded gravely. "The committee votes in favor of referral." The chamber erupted. Reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing, members arguing across party lines. AOC sat motionless, her lips pressed tight, while Tulsi calmly gathered her folders and stood. Outside, the headlines wrote themselves. "AOC faces ethics investigation after explosive hearing," and "Gabbard's challenge sends shockwaves through Congress." In living rooms across America, viewers replayed the moment again and again. The hesitation in AOC's voice, the quiet precision of Tulsi's challenge, and the raised hands that sealed the decision. The future was uncertain. The investigation might take months, maybe longer, but the damage was already done. AOC's carefully built image had cracked, and Tulsi's reputation as a relentless truth-teller had grown stronger. As Tulsi stepped into the flashing lights outside the chamber, a reporter shouted, "Director Gabbard, what does this mean for Representative Ocasio-Cortez?" She paused, then answered simply, "It means accountability is no longer optional." And with that, she walked away, leaving Washington and the nation buzzing with a single thought. Had AOC's career just crossed the point of no return?